It's totally free. So here's my Pear Deck webinar that I have ready to go. But before we get started into this, first of all, Graphical Math does not work with Pear Deck. It doesn't. But I'm just going to show it to you anyway, since you showed up for a math thing. Let me show you Graphical Math. Let me put this in the chat.
Oh, that's the one where you stick things together and it combines the like terms and undoes things.
Yeah, it does. It's pretty awesome. So I was showing the kids, and I've got a little bit of this in the Pear Deck slides, but let me just show you this before I get going into the Pear Deck, because once I'm in the Pear Deck, it'll be harder to go back and forth. So let's say I have 2x plus 3x plus 5 plus x plus 6 equals 9 plus 5x. And then I'm going to do it again. So what I do is I give it to the students 4 times. I'm not joking. And so this is what I was working on with the kids this week, was solving equations with variables on both sides of the equal sign. But what I don't want to do is say, step 1, identify the equal sign. Step 2, simplify to the left of the equal sign. Step 3, simplify to the right of the equal sign. Step 4, use inverse properties, right? I don't want to do any of that. And so I want them to get the impression that there's more than one way to do a math problem, that they should approach it by thinking, not memorizing the steps, and that they should have some choices. So I'm like, well, what do you want to do first? You want to add the 2 and the 3? Okay, 2x and 3x. So if you double click, did you see that? I'm going to undo. So you have the 2x and 3x. If I click on the plus sign, it combines the like terms. So now we're getting out of the weeds. We lose the forest for the trees. Where we like, do they know how to do integers or not? Or can they think through a math problem? Like, let's not worry about whether or not you can do the arithmetic and worry about whether or not you can understand the properties. All right, what about this 5x and this 5? You see when I click on the plus, it's like, no, you can't do that. So if I want to add the like terms, I have to drag it and move it over, commutative property, and then I add them like terms, and then I have to use inverse properties when I want to move it to the opposite side. So we spend the whole time talking about properties and ideas and doing it in different ways, and whatever order you want to do it and whatever you want to do. You can multiply everything if you want to, right? We just don't. It would make a hot mess. If I wanted to multiply everything by 7, I could. There's just no necessary reason to, but you could.
Yeah.
All right, what's something different you want to do on this one? You want to add the 5x. You have to hold down the shift key to get the 5 and the x together. And you want to bring it over with the 3x. And then you want to move the 5, and then you want to move the 6. You don't have to simplify it first. You don't have to. Let's focus on, like, well, what do you want to do first? Okay, what do I need to do? What's it saying? You know, is the 5x at the, whatever, I got them all moved over to the right sides right here. But, these like terms, they don't say they're added together. They're, there's the equal sign, and you have them click on the equal sign, it swaps the sides. And so what I like to do is we do the first step and move on. We don't do the whole thing because you get lost. Like, what are we doing? Like, let's first focus on what's going on here. What could we do? What's possible? Let's do one thing. Let's do it again, but let's do a different thing first. So I'll go into the Graphical Math and I'll put up this equation like literally 4 times, and we just do the first part with something else you could do. So I'm just trying to get them to focus on the number sense and the properties. And if they have anxiety because they don't know what negative 5x and x is, well, whatever, it'll do it for them. But they knew they were like terms, and I'll take that, and later on they're going to have to do one by themselves. But let's build up to that. Is first, let's work through how many ways can I do this? Why would you do it this way? And have conversations through math. That's my starting place when I introduce math and other things. So let's go ahead and do the Pear Deck. I have a Google Slides that I made for this, and I am going to go to the add-ons menu, except my screen is too skinny. I lost it. So in the add-ons menu, I have Pear Deck for Google Slides. So you need to install Pear Deck. You can go to peardeck.com. I'll put that down in the chat. And install it. It's freemium. And so the drawing features and the dragging features are premium features, which you're going to see. You're going to want them with doing the math. They're not required. I've been teaching one-to-one math with computers since 1999, and we didn't have right on the screen and dragging and drawing and these things. And my students are not any worse off for it. There's lots of ways to approach math that doesn't require drawing, but it is nice if you can. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the add-ons for Pear Deck. I'm going to open Pear Deck. And what I did is I create my Google Slides and what I want the students to do. And then I can click any of these buttons in the right, in the margin, sidebar, in the sidebar here. And it makes that slide interactive. And that's really what we need to be doing. Old school, I'll just talk about myself. I would write a problem on the board that no one would care about. Oh, wait, sorry. First, we'd spend 15 minutes going over the homework where I do all the homework problems. And then I'd write a problem on the board that no one cares about, and I'd wait for them to copy it. And then I would write all of the steps, and I'd wait for them to copy that one. So far, what DOK level am I at? 0. Copying is not recall. DOK 0. So far, I'm doing all the talking, I'm doing all the thinking, and I'm 30 minutes into class. I do the entire problem for them. DOK 0. And then I give them a problem just like it, guided practice. Now it's DOK 1. We do a couple more together, and then I send them home to independently do what I do, we do, you do. I'm not into that. I do, we do, you do is a very teacher-centered approach, and it's the teacher does the thinking, you regurgitate it back. And so we need to flip this around. We need to have math class being my quick and dirties. We start with students thinking. So I like to pull from Joe Bowler's book, which of course I have a slide for that. Mathematical Mindsets. She's got an example in there of a calculus teacher who gives the students lemons. They have to figure out, okay, what's the volume of these lemons? And wouldn't you know it, not one of them figured out calculus. So she did the entire integral lesson. But if you use the 5E's lesson plan model, engage, explore, explain, extend, evaluate, explain comes third. The way I used to teach, the first 30 minutes of any class was me doing the talking, me doing the thinking. The first 30 minutes of class should be the students doing the talking and the students doing the thinking. So what's great about Pear Deck is it allows it to be interactive. It's not about me talking. It's about getting the students to talk and think. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a Google Slides. It has questions and information in it, and hopefully to have students think through problems. You're going to click on these icons here to make the slide interactive, or you go to the template library. Just going to throw one in here. I'll add the homework assignment one. It has pre-made slides that you can just add. It just boom, throws them in there, and you click Start Lesson. So I'm going to click Start Lesson. It can be student paced and instructor paced. So I'd like you to consider, what if a student's not in class? So then I'll do the student paced, get the link, post it into Google Classroom as if you're absent. Here's the student paced. Otherwise, we're doing it together, either in Google Meet or face-to-face, right? And what's awesome about this is if you are in a situation where you have students face-to-face with you and remote, Pear Deck is a no-brainer. It allows everyone to participate, whether or not they're in class or not. So long as you're on a device, they don't have to be on the same Wi-Fi. So what I do is I take the I take this link where it says give students a link, and I put it on the stream in Google Classroom. And so that way my students are remote. They can join and participate remotely. And the students that are there, they can just go to the stream and they can get there faster. You can go to joinpd.com and then type in the code, but it's obviously faster if the kids put in just click the link. So either way. I'm going to share my entire screen. Oops. I'm going to share my entire screen. So you can see kind of how I'm going to roll this. I try to get the Google Meet in the bottom right-hand corner so that the presentation I get most of what I'm seeing in the upper left, but I show the chat on the right, and I can still see the people on the bottom. And now they have this teacher dashboard, which you are able to open up on your phone. So you can have it separately. So this teacher dashboard shows student names, where the big one, that's what you're projecting. So when I'm screen sharing on a Google Meet, when I'm projecting to students in class, this is what they see, this big one up here. This little one is how I can kind of control it, give feedback. So I'm in person, I do extended desktop, and I push, I don't know if you know this, when you have an extended desktop, you have to drag it off the screen onto the extended desktop. Come on, go back. Go back. Ah. How do I get this to go back? Yeah, okay. Woo, that was hard. So don't do it on accident. I don't have extended desktop on. But so I can pay attention to all those. If I am doing it remotely, I share the window with the projection screen, but then I don't share my entire screen so that I can see the teacher dashboard, this one with the student names, where I can give feedback on it, just to myself. Okay. Close the join code. So you should see on your screen right now is pushing to you the slides that I have. So it says Math and Pear Deck. You should see that on your screen. And then I have controls here on the teacher dashboard. I can also control it on the presentation. So you can see on the presentation, it's got 1 of 16. So I can use the arrows to move to the next slide. How was the homework assignment? So you should be able to drag a dot. Just make it up. I want to remind you that I just showed you a few seconds ago how I added this slide. You know, we want to start with students thinking. How do you feel about math? You know, getting that SEL in there, making some sort of connection to start with students is great. Now, you don't see anything up here on the projection, but if you are looking at the teacher dashboard that I have down here, I can see some of the dots that are moving. And then I can choose to show the responses. I don't think it shows on your screen, correct? It's just showing on my projection. So you can see how people responded, and I can hide the responses and show the responses. I can push to lock your screens. Like, hey, look up here real quick. And then I can also push out a new prompt. And they've got some pre-made ones. So I didn't have that pre-prepared. So in the teacher dashboard, I'm able, and also on the projection screen, it says new prompt in the corner. I'm able to, on the fly during the lesson, put that out there. And so you'd be able to draw on the grid. Now, when I show responses, it shows the responses individually. But if I click on over here, I think I've only that's got to draw on these for me. There we go. I can go to a grid layout. So you see I can see everybody's responses in a little grid, or I can layer them. So when I show these responses, I can layer the responses or grid the responses. If I do it this way, I scroll through the responses. I'm in the upper left-hand corner. I can have a grid of the responses so I can see everybody's response all at once. Or I can layer them so I can see everybody what they have written at the same time. I'm going to hide the responses. I'm going to go to the next one, so I should push that to you. Pear Deck has a whole bunch of stuff in there that allows you to just do like, take a stretch break. How are you feeling? And I can see on the teacher dashboard what's being responded. And I can go to the next one. So when we have tools like Pear Deck, how can we rethink how we teach math? I mean, a lot of things we could just physically couldn't do. We're one person. We can't manage hearing from every student. Normally when we ask a question, we hear from one or two students. When I use digital tools like Pear Deck, Google Slides, GeoGebra has this cool classroom thing where I can see everybody responding at once. Padlet, I don't know, lots of ways to do it. I now give everybody a chance to think and everybody a chance to respond. And the thing that I notice is pretty consistently, my wait time is terrible. You know, what I used to, like I'd ask a question and wait for responses. That's enough time for the loudmouth who always, oh, Keeler, call on me. I haven't thought about my answer at all, but I just want to word vomit out the first thing that comes out of my mouth, right? Like, you know, and as soon as one kid's hands goes up, everybody's thinking goes down. So with technology, we can end that and say, no, I'm going to wait for everybody to think. It's very stress-inducing, fight or flight, when you give it to me right now. When we give kids a chance to have time to think, we're going to get a lot more thoughtful answers, and it helps me to guide my lesson based on everyone's response and not just the response of a couple of students. All right. And of course, everyone knows I love Joe Bowler. Math is creative and visual. Number talks are highly rated for learning. So using Pear Deck allows me to have a more creative visual approach and to do number talks with students. So what are 3 ways you can represent the number 12? What are 3 ways that you can represent the number 12? If you haven't joined yet, here's the join code and here's the link. So I can see down here I have 3 of 4 people who have responded. The way, if I show the responses, they're layered on top of each other, which in this particular context is a hot mess. Switch it to grid layout. And now we're valuing having multiple approaches, especially with our little kids, but all the way, all the grades. We don't want to start them off thinking there's a certain way to do math. And we've given kids that impression for a lot of years. And that's one of the reasons kids hate math, is they feel like they don't get to be creative with it. Like they have to do it this exact way that their teacher does it, but it doesn't make sense to them. And if they can just do it another way that makes sense to them, I can't tell you how many times I've worked with a student like, oh, that makes so much sense, but my teacher says I have to do it this way. Like, no, we need to stop that. Now, I understand why we used to do that back in the day, but now that we have the ability to use some different methods with technology, we can share other students' responses and we guide conversations around. So we have, notice everyone has a different answer. and we value what different ideas, and we don't, say this is the best one, but rather, talk through them. And as Joe Bowler says, when you make a mistake, your brain grows. And so one of the phrases I like to use a lot is, I like how you're thinking. And then it is much more interesting conversations if they don't get it right, because it's not that they're dumb. They were thinking. Let's talk about what you were thinking and how that makes sense, and what we want to think about instead, and get the students to do the talking. So I can switch it to individual view. So I'm like, all right, here we have a dozen. What's a dozen? So I can use student work to guide the conversation instead of the students do the talking, instead of me doing the talking. I'm down here. I can do hide responses on the instructor dashboard, or I can hide the responses in the presentation. So this is Joe Bowler diamond paper. If you do this with paper, you take a piece of paper, you fold in half, and you fold in half again, and you fold over the corner, and it makes a little diamond in the center. And Joe Bowler says that you can do any math problem using this method. And I went and saw her in Scotland, and she gave it was the square root of x plus 1 plus the square root of x equals some number. I don't remember what it was. And I'm like, wait, I have to draw a picture of this? That was hard. I'm still working on that problem. It's been 2 years. But, when you ask kids to do it multiple ways, we get away from this. There's one way to do it. Memorize the steps, whether or not you understand it. And we make sure kids understand it before we move on. So if you are an English teacher, you know the Freyer model. This is the math version of the Freyer model. So it takes longer to do one math problem, but we want them to go deeper, to think about it, to do multiple representations, to share the multiple representations with the class and have the class talk about why they did the method they did and what do they think about this one. And you're going to spend a lot of time on one problem, but we're going to spend a lot of time thinking about one problem.
Alice?
Yes.
I got a question for you. When the students write or give you their responses and you show their work, is there any way to tell which student's work it is?
But only on the dashboard.
Oh, okay.
So I'll scroll up to this one. You see on this dashboard, I can see this was Santa.
Okay.
With Elisa, but it doesn't show that on the individual, like the projector screen. The projector screen remains anonymous.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so if you would like to see the diamond paper, I have a Google Slides version at alicekeeler.com/solve-it. This is by Kathy Williams at UCubed. So it's one of the things I got from a Joe Bowler presentation, but Kathy Williams, who works at Stanford, this diamond method is her work. Just want to give proper credit. I'll put it in the chat. That will give you a Google Slides with this. So I a lot of times do this on Google Slides, but you can do it on Pear Deck as well. And for those lovely reasons that you can show everybody's response in a grid, that you can layer them if you want to, show individual ones easily. Pear Deck makes a great way when you want to visualize it because the kids can draw. So what would be your first step? So you'll see that I've taken the same problem. I know this is not an elementary example, but I intentionally wanted one that was long and ridiculous. What would be your first step? If you could just write on there on the left, what would you do first? Don't do the whole thing. That's one of the things I try to do is don't lose the forest for the trees. When you go through all the steps every time, you lose the concepts. Bye, Kimberly. All right, so I've got to combine like terms. I'm able to, you see, I can star her answer. I can leave feedback. What terms? Because even when we say like terms, like, well, which ones? I can see that they are typing in real time. And you see that I need to give more wait time than I want to. But I want to make sure is I'm like, okay, that was your first step. Now that we've seen from everybody, what do you want to do first? And we're not going to go left to right. You don't have to go left to right. Why do we tell kids that? With the order of operations, I don't do it left to right. I do not. So don't say you need to. That's the law. Well, I break the law every day. I do not go left to right. And helping kids to realize that if they have enough number sense to understand how the numbers work together, sometimes it's easier to not go left to right. I'm working with a girl at my school. She's a senior, and she's not been super successful in math, and so she's doing a online computer thing. One second. And so I'm sitting down with her, and I give her a math problem to do, and I'm like, you know, how would you do this? And I know how that feels. It is so anxiety producing to have anybody just ask. I mean, even a basic math problem like 5 + 7, I'll make a joke that I'm not good at math. Like, I don't want to give the wrong answer, and I don't want to feel dumb, so I'm just going to tell you I can't do it. And it's just like, my heart races, because when I was in elementary school, we had to do those stupid time math tests where you better do it fast. You know what? I don't do math fast. And Joe Bowler says that being fast is not the same as being smart. And that's really important, is that we are willing to look at other ways to do it, and that we give kids time to think. Hey, quick, what's the answer? Fight or flight? I don't know. I don't know. And we do this to kids all the time, and then we wonder why they don't like math, because now they have a negative association with it. So using a tool like Pear Deck, I can see that I need to wait, give them time to think. It's okay, I'm not projecting your name. I can give you private feedback, and we can value doing it different ways. All right, drag your dot. Which one doesn't belong? Yeah, Mindy, it doesn't go away. I think, Mindy, you're maybe a year older than me, and I'm 44, and I still feel traumatized by it. So anyway, I was telling the girl, like, look, I get it. It's stressful. So let's look at a different way of doing it. I'm like, let's start from the middle and how we can get zero-sum pairs and try it a different way. And just the look of relief that I'm not making her try to do arithmetic in front of me, and we use strategies to work through how we break it down, just it's so much less stressful. This was fun. I did this with my students. Now you see I've got the answers layered. Many of you chose the hexagon. Why is that one not belong? So my favorite word is because. And so I just try to get the kids, whatever they tell me, to throw in the word because justifying your reasoning and explaining your reasoning is way more valuable than can you under stress quickly and without making a mistake, because I'm going to make you feel dumb and grade you on it, get the right answer. Now, in the real world, I get the wrong answer all the time. Anyone else? You work through it and you're like, oh, that's not right, and you have to end up fixing it. Thank goodness no one's grading us. Math is not, I know what to do the first time. Math should be like, I take my strategy, my approach, I try this, I think about it, like, no, that's not right. Here's how I know it's not right. We self-correct all the time, don't we? I went to the wodb.ca website so I could get the what would you do? It's got like a bunch of them. I just took a screenshot and put it on there. So you see how we can have students do, I would do this because, and just getting, there's more than one right answer. Is it, why did you pick the bottom right? Because I have 3 white ones and a gray one. Why did I pick the top right? Because I have 3 triangles and a hexagon. And one of my girls, she picked the first one, and I loved her reasoning. All of them are flat on the bottom except the first one. There's no wrong answer. Do you see how we start to give kids the impression that there's more than one answer? And if you justify your reasoning, there's, we want kids to be thinkers in math, and following steps and memorizing steps is not thinking. For many of us, it's very stressful. For me, it is. This is one of the ones that's pre-made. They just have these true, false, and different things in there. This probably is not so black and white as I've given it. But before we give them the steps, before we say the first thing you do is y equals mx plus b, and then you put the b on the y-intercept. Before we do that, we have them explore, engage, explore, explain, extend, evaluate. That's the 5 E's instructional model for teaching math, but I think it's good for all subjects. What can they figure out without you? And you know what? The answer is a lot. And that's a good thing. We want them to figure it out and find. This is one thing I write when I make a math lesson. I write this on a Post-it note, and I write down, this was a tweet from U Cubed out of Stanford. Math is about pattern finding. Is that how I was taught math? No. So when I sit down and do a math lesson, it's so easy, and I do it. I have definitely not mastered this, is to revert back to what was done to me. How was I taught math? The types of math questions that I feel comfortable with. And to get different ones that are more like the what would you do, and how would you think through this, and what are 2 ways to solve this, and doing number talks and focusing on number sense instead of get the answer. I'd like to say get the answer is obsolete anyway. Especially in a remote situation, how do you keep kids from using their phone and looking it up on PhotoMath or MathAway? You guys see MathAway? I think it's MathAway. Nope. MathAway. Is this it? I think it's this one. No, this is not it. Look at that. Gives me the answer. And then if I tap, it's going to give me, here's all the steps, here's what you did, and here's the justification. You can't fight technology. Technology is not going to go away, and it's only going to get better. When I started teaching, we said the kids could not use a calculator. The algebra kids could not use a calculator because what? Are they always going to have a calculator with them? I'm glad that you said that, because there's a Desmos app, and they'll always have Desmos and a graphing calculator, and that's only going to get better. So if we're not focusing on the students doing the thinking, and that math be about them thinking and figuring it out, we should just cancel math, honestly. And the truth is, no one's ever going to see a math problem like we give them out of a textbook, ever. They're never going to see a math problem out of a textbook unless they're helping their kid with their homework. So if they're not able to approach a problem like, I don't know, let me figure this out, we're failing them. You can do multiple choice questions. Just do a quick check. Now you know what is the multiplicative inverse of -5.
Alice, I've got another question for you.
Please.
When I am done, like in the day, I usually post notes that I kind of like write down from I kind of go back to my Google Slides, and I put notes on it based on what we discussed during class. And I put that on my Google Classroom for the kids who need a copy of the notes.
Mhm.
Are you able to do that with this type of presentation? With the Pear Deck?
I mean, it's a Google Slides. It's literally a Google Slides. So you can go back and make modifications to the slides where you add notes in and things that the student said.
Okay, so that part doesn't work any differently because it has Pear Deck attached to it.
No, it doesn't do that as far as I know. You know, I can get individual reports from the students, but I don't have any. I don't have a copy of all the the slides where it's at what everybody put. No.
Okay.
So what do I have on here? This is a students write your response. So you can ask them a question. Everybody types in response. Spiraling is more effective than concentrated practice. So when you use something like Pear Deck, you want to always keep coming back to a question. So if you go back to Joe Bowler's book, Mathematical Mindsets, she says, hey, if doing 30 problems at once worked, we'd all be good at math. But that doesn't work. So instead, what you do is you give 3 problems, and they might not that do not follow I'm going to give them 3 problems. They are not exactly like the problem I gave them. If I give them a problem that's exactly like I gave them, they're not thinking, they're trying to follow my steps. And one of them might not follow the pattern, and they should explain why this doesn't work. And then what I want to do is just keep coming back to, we do these 3 problems, then tomorrow I give them another one where we come back and revisit it, and then we come back later and do another one. So I end up doing the 30 problems. I do quizzes every single day where I'm spiraling, I'm coming back to the problems, and I don't assign them to do a pile of them all at once over time. So when you create your Pear Decks, if your lesson is on counting by 10 and you previously had counted by 2, mix some of those in there as well. What you don't want to do is have them in a mindset, this is what we're working on, so the next problem is going to be about that. No, math should be about thinking. So I need to make sure that when you approach a new problem, you have to think about it and like, here, let me show you something. Now here's a problem. Like, wait, that's not what that was. Exactly. That's not what that was. And so I want them to not be in a pattern of looking for the pattern of we're doing these kinds of problems, so I'm going to apply these things to it, but instead to take every problem on its own merit, to think, yes, keep them on their toes. Thanks, Mindy. So if you could draw or type 2 things you learned in today's lesson, and this again is a built-in template from Pear Deck. And then I'm going to show responses. And you can see, I can see as they are writing on it. Thank you. Keep them guessing. You can I screenshot it. I didn't copy and paste. I probably could have right-clicked to copy the picture, but I did use a screenshot, just so you know. Right, be interactive. Use some of the ready-made templates. Thank you. Appreciate it. Algebra problems can be manipulated on a website. Absolutely. That's the Graphical Math. Is super cool. Right? Appreciate it. So you can use Pear Deck for live or asynchronous math instruction, and you can actually do it for both. So how are you going to use Pear Deck? You can see on my teacher dashboard down here that I'm able to see your responses as you are typing it. Right, to liven up my pre-done canned slides, right? We find who's got time to recreate everything from the wheel? You know what I mean? And you shouldn't, but you can spice them up and make them interactive by just taking the slides that you have and adding them with Pear Deck, right? Yes, see what students are thinking and having those conversations to be interactive. When thinking is engaging. So keeping them doing something because they're thinking through it is great. And I think that was my last, yes, that's my last one. So does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Alice, I have a question.
Ma'am.
Do you know anything about Edpuzzle? Because is that like Pear Deck, or are they just not the same?
They're not the same, but Edpuzzle is in the idea that it creates what would be a passive video experience into a little bit more interactive one, because they watch some video and then they have to answer some questions. And so, yeah, it just kind of makes the videos a little bit more, cuts it up. They have to watch this chunk and then answer the next question. So this is really that's asynchronous. Pear Deck can be synchronous or asynchronous, but it's not a video experience.
Thank you.
Welcome. So Pear Deck and Jamboard are just different, Marianne. I would use Jamboard just to have them to, well, I guess they're similar in some ways, that they can add some sticky notes and do their thinking, and they can draw on the Jamboard. But you only get 20 frames in a Jamboard, and I can't display everybody's responses like I can, like with the Pear Deck lets me layer them. The Pear Deck lets you answer separately and then come together. The Jamboard is everybody at the same time, having everybody draw on the same slide at the same time. If you've got more than a couple of students, I actually sort them out in Jamboard. They each have their own frame in Jamboard because there's just not enough room. So you can see how we can go through a whole lesson where there's multiple things going on with Pear Deck that I can't really do so much with Jamboard. But there's certainly a lot of great templates out there on Jamboard. It helps you facilitate a Jamboard lesson. But I would say that they're different.
Okay. And the asynchronous Pear Deck, they will work on their own through the slides. If it's synchronous, you move the slides one at a time, right?
Right.
Okay.
Asynchronous is self-paced, so I'll be able to see their responses. I can give them feedback. I actually, when I'm in the self-paced mode, I can open up the dashboard and I can see that people are responding and what they're responding in real time. They're just doing it at their own speed. So they go to the next slide. So one of the things that Pear Deck lets you do is to add audio to the slides. So you can add some instruction or talk them like, this is what I want you to do or to explore. The part that you lose out on the asynchronous is you're not having a discussion.
Right.
You know, they don't see the other students' work.
Okay. Thank you.
Anna, you could take a screenshot of this where you see everybody's response. I'm looking at it, you're not. You know, but I see all the little bubbles of everybody's answer. Take a screenshot of it before you go on to the next slide so that when you want to prepare, you want to give it to everybody at the end, you can do it with a collection of screenshots that easily drag into Google Slides.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Wait, and the screenshots are for each individual student or
So,
the whole?
Anna asked, she's like, for students who weren't able to be there, how would they get the discussion, you know, the summary of the notes of what happened during the lesson?
Okay.
So I'm suggesting that she could be taking screenshots before she moves on to the next slide. Now,
Okay.
I would use Snagit. It really literally doesn't matter. But what I like about Snag is it just captures them all in the tray down there. And then they're just kind of like in a line ready for me. So then when I have the slides open, I just drag them from Snagit right in. I drag them into Google Slides. And it makes it really fast and easy. But even if I just use the screenshot tool on my computer, it saves it to my desktop. I have a Mac, so I right click and I organize the screenshots on my desktop to be by date. So then they're all right there together, right at the upper right of my desktop screen. And they're easy to drag in also.
Okay. And the Snagit folder, is it in my computer or is in Drive?
So Snagit is its own individual program. We did a webinar on that the other day. So alicekeeler.com/Snagit if you want to install a trial. It's a screenshot tool that installs not on a Chromebook.
Yeah. No, I have it. I already pay for it and I have it. But
So
if I will go in the app again and see this.
open. I've been taking these screenshots. It's got the tray at the bottom that has all the recent screenshots.
Okay. Okay. I just have to open.
If you have so many of them, they went off the screen. What you can do is click on the little picture in the tray, right click, and it says reveal in Finder, it'll show you where it is. All the screenshots are in your computer. There's a folder somewhere in your computer.
Okay, great. Thank you. But it's not in Drive, like Screencastify and others. Okay, great.
But you could use, there's a ton, like my quick share screenshot, Chrome extension, just use that and those save to Drive.
Okay, it's called Quick Share, huh? A screenshot.
Go to alicekeeler.com/web store. The quick share screenshot is in there. It's free.
Okay, thank you.
I use that every day.
Yeah, I end up with a lot of screenshots and I have to save them and name them and put them in a place. It takes time.
Yes, it does.
Okay, awesome.
Any other questions? All right, well, I hope you enjoyed using Pear Deck. I use it with my math students. I think it's a great tool to use for math and encourage them to get the site license. My site license is, I got a quote for them, is only $3,500, which is a lot cheaper than a lot of other products for the site license. I mean, it is freemium. A lot of the features are completely free, but what you get with Pear Deck is the drawing and the dragging and the exporting of individual reports and the syncing with Google Classroom are premium.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, you
Thank
guys.
you.
Rest of your Sunday. Brag about relaxing. Let's change the culture of teaching. Like, don't be a workaholic. For those of you who are in office hours, we're talking about an article that's being passed around on Facebook. Self-care.
All right.
All right, bye, you guys. Have a good
Bye, Alice. Thank you.
Thanks.